We also want to play this because if I understand you correctly, a big reason that you got into this business because of the invasion of Iraq and the fact that you perceived accurately that it was built on lies and it was going to be morally, militarily, economically catastrophic. And I want to play this clip of George W. Bush, and people should review this clip regularly, announcing the invasion of Iraq. We're going to play about a minute or so of this and then go to you.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign. More than 35 countries are giving crucial support, from the use of naval and air bases to help with intelligence and logistics to the deployment of combat units. Every nation in this coalition has chosen to bear the duty and share the honor of serving in our common defense. To all the men and women of the United States Armed Forces now in the Middle East, the peace of a troubled world and the hopes of an oppressed people now depend on you.
Oof. Thanks for that.
Hey, man, we're living history here.
Yeah, I mean, look, it wasn't unexpected. The first Majority Report was about a month before that on the best show on FMU. And Tom Sharpling, who was a friend, let me take over 2 hours because he felt the same way I did. There was no left-wing talk radio like Limbaugh. And so John Benjamin and I went over there to New Jersey, where FMU broadcasts out of, and I booked Janine as a guest, and I can't remember the guy's name. I want to say Julian.
Oh, I know Julian Phillips. Julian Phillips.
A guy?
Dude, you don't remember this story?
Oh, wait, maybe.
So because I go on all those global networks, and there used to be one called Arise, which actually might still exist. And Arise, wasn't state funded. It was literally funded by some Nigerian entrepreneur who would not pay people every couple of months, and the station would shut down. But they got, in this news environment, they hired some pretty legit people. And I did a couple, including James Carville actually was a contributor there. That's why I hung out with James Carville once. It was pretty funny. And I would go on with this guy, Julian Phillips, who was very nice. He couldn't have been nicer. And he was a total straight, and that's the news at 11. I'm Julian Phillips. And I said to you once that you said, oh, how did that thing go or something? I said, oh, this guy Julian Phillips, he's a nice guy. And I looked at his bio. I was like, it's funny. I think he was on Fox News. And you go, oh.
That's the guy.
Now you can take it from here.
Yeah, so somehow I don't know how I got him. I have no idea how I managed to do that. But I got this guy to come on. And he was the only guy I could get it to come on from Fox News. There is no liberal television. There's no liberal talk radio. And I brought the guy on, and I just begin to hammer him. I was O'Reilly, and he was I remember O'Reilly had guys on. There was a kid, I can't remember who it was. His dad had died in the towers, and he was speaking out against the war. And O'Reilly would just attack him viciously. And
Jesus, they're fucking sociopath. Kid, and this is a year after his dad had been murdered.
Yeah.
And he's speaking out in his conscience, and O'Reilly's getting in his face.
By kid, I mean somebody who probably was in his 20s or
whatever.
Or
I mean, it's a sign of how thuggish they were.
Oh, it was incredibly thuggish. Yeah. And I was basically taken off. And I went in there. I think I actually still have somewhere the notebook. I had a notebook like this that was just and I'm quoting him, the Project for New American Century. And I'm going do you think and at one point he says, look, I'm just the weekend guy.
I mean, literally, he's maybe this isn't because Shep Smith opinionates, but yes, he was clearly part of the crop of he was you read the headlines guy, not the.
Yeah, no, he was Fox and Friends on the weekend.
Right. No,
but,
he
was his pedigree was definitely that.
Right.
And I took advantage of him. But to be fair, it's not like I was a professional. I had no idea what I
Oh
was
no, I
doing.
remember
It was
listening
a
to this. You were
horrible-
definitely not professional.
No, it was.
It was like a rage gasm. But
Yeah.
it was basically like you just said you are going to personify News Corp for me. I am going to take everything out
Yeah,
on this,
I was
on
just
this horrible
yelling, and it was very
corporation.
frustrating. It was
Right.
very frustrating, and the idea was like, look, this information is out there. This is clearly bullshit, and there was nothing you could do. And I think for me, I mean, I had been talking with Janine about doing a radio show, a political talk radio show, following the Bush election, the 2000 election. I was obsessed with, and
Even before it was stolen.
well, in the lead up to it, I was I was very actively engaged. Like I think I did some canvassing. I don't know, and maybe in New York for Gore, but I also was like going to. I vote swapped. I mean, I was sort of like a Nader guy, but
Right.
I was like going to vote swap.
Yep.
So I was going to say to somebody, like Nader wasn't supposed to run in Florida originally, and then he did, and then someone had developed something online where you could like just pledge, I will vote for Nader in New York if you vote for Gore in Florida. And because I was disposed towards Nader, but I also was like, I don't want George Bush to be president. And so the vote swapping was like a way of getting Nader votes, but in a state where, Gore was clearly going to win. And so then the election itself I felt was stolen. And
I think we need to talk about that a hell of a lot more in general. I mean, we don't have that much time now, obviously, because we have a lot more to get to, but it's just amazing to me. Like, I think that should be on the list. Like people say, the invasion of Iraq, the Wall Street meltdown. I think you got to add Supreme Court gives George W. Bush the election.
Oh, definitely. I mean, that was just contemplate the indication of that as how partisan the Supreme Court was at the time and how cowed the media was. And, I've mentioned this many times, but the September 13th, 2001 Newsweek cover, when Newsweek was actually like something that everybody read, it was Time in Newsweek, was going to be about a big rift in the Supreme Court that sort of broke out into the open, oddly enough, when Russian Supreme Court justices, their version of that, came for a meeting where they come and they learn how the U.S. Supreme Court works. And they obviously pulled that cover, but I felt like there was sort of like a shock. Like it was like the legal establishment in this country was in a state of shock based upon that ruling. And that it took them like 6 to 9 months to sort of like just come out of shock and then say like, this is effed up. And then 9/11 happened. And that was all she wrote. And then that, really changed the trajectory of things.
And didn't those news organizations that finished the count in Florida find that Gore would have won on a full recount? Was that true?
I mean, the New York Times did a big analysis that, on some level said, yes, had you done a full recount, it appeared that, and they only did like certain, then the question is like, well, would you have to recount every single county?
Right.
But yeah, they found that. I mean, also there were like 15,000 voters, I think, in that district who had been disenfranchised by Catherine Harris, who was the Secretary of State and also the George W. Bush campaign chair in Florida. Remember, the boring Bush was the governor of Florida at that time. And so there was a lot of different ways in which that could have gone. But the Supreme Court should have never interfered in that in any shape or form.
Let alone evoke the 14th Amendment on George W. Bush's civil rights. That's
right.
pretty extraordinary.
And then say, and also
and don't
add-
ever apply this again.
Right.
Only use this for
This
a
doesn't
governor
count. This is a
that we're
one-off.
handing the
We're doing
presidency to.
the classic Supreme Court one-off where this has no bearing on U.S. law. It's just sort of like,
Just fucking do it.
it's a side gig, sort of like what we're doing.